Thank you for having us. Wow. I also want to say that so we're here because we both, current student, alum of a big picture learning school. We both went to the San Diego Met High School, graduated 10 plus years ago. But the foundation of the school, I think, is just the impact that it can have and has had on my life. And I'm pretty sure on your life as well, is interesting and just worthy of talking about. So I'm Karla Cruz Godoy, and welcome and thank you. All right, so we have a few years between us, and different leadership, and some of the structure is different within the San Diego Met, which is also part of the Big Picture Learning Network, that I have to say. I just want to talk about self and community because the San Diego Met's a small high school located in the Mesa College campus, and when I attended, we had probably 200 students max.
It's way less now.
But the idea of small schools are interesting because I went to a traditional, big, large middle school here in City Heights. What does self and community feel for you currently at the Met?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like everything, honestly, and I think it's one of the things that's kept me in school or sort of kept me motivated as a learner. Just because community, I think, is one of the largest pillars at the Met too. I run the Student Ambassadors program, so I'm doing a lot of like tour giving. I'm talking to new students, prospective families, and sort of giving facts about the school. And I see sort of like a wave of like relief wash over parents and families when I tell them how strong and tight-knit our community is. Just because, like, for example, like bullying's not a thing. We don't shame people, like, based on race, sexual orientation, gender identity. And I think, taking away all those worries for, like, these kids and these minorities coming to school, taking those worries out, and then substituting it with a community that makes them feel welcome, seen, and heard, makes it, just a lot more engaging to come to school, if that makes sense. Because I've found that, in middle school, I did have to worry about, like, my 8th grade year was really hard for me because I had to, am I gonna get shamed for the clothes that I'm wearing today? Is somebody gonna make fun of the way that I'm talking today? Which made it really hard for me to be in that space. So then to have it contrasted with the community that sort of, welcomes you, celebrates you, sees you. I always make a joke that, like, there is no blending in at the Met because since we're so tiny, like, somebody is going to know you. Like, even if you just have one friend or even if you talk to the entire school, there's no such thing as being like, I'll just hang out in the back because somebody's gonna go up and be like, why are you sitting back here? What's up? Like, are you okay? What's going on? So I'd say it's really, really important. It's helped me, especially through those awkward teenage years of your life that you go through as you grow throughout high school. So I'd say it's probably one of the most vital parts of my education experience.
Yeah, I think I stumbled upon the San Diego Met 2 weeks before it started when I went, between 8th and 9th grade. Didn't know anything about the school. Emailed the principal and I was like, do you have a spot? And she was like, the fact that you're emailing me 2 weeks before school starts, you're in. And little did I know that the structure of the school would change the way that I look at opportunities in life. To have agency at such a young age to go to any internship that I really wanted. If the opportunity wasn't presented, I could find an internship. So for example, I was coming of age and figuring out who I was, and I wanted to do an internship at the San Diego Pride office. They didn't have that available, but they were like, if you want it, ask. So email the San Diego Pride office and ask them if you can intern there. I didn't know that was possible, but the fact that that was part of the structure in terms of finding internships and coordinating all that, I was able to get an internship not only for myself, but for other students. Not that I used school, but for me, school was an escape because I didn't really have that. My parents worked a lot, and so having the advisory model for me was super affirming that I was, I don't want to say a great student, but that I was capable of success in the classroom. Having an advisor for 4 years, see my growth. And also, I think learning plans really, really changed the way that I see myself as a learner or saw myself as a learner. And actually now working for BPL, we do learning plans as colleagues and as employees, which is full circle for me because I'm like, wow, I can talk about my learning as an employee now. Is there any way that, actually, I want to go into, I was talking a little bit about advisory and internships, but also this idea of exhibitions. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was, for me, like, I can talk about my learning because I don't like to write so much about my learning, but share it with my family. Mm-hmm. was super eye-opening.
Yeah.
How's that experience for you?
Yeah. So I mean, I wasn't new to the concept of exhibitions coming in, just because I went to High Tech High for 8 years, so I was sort of used to the whole concept of like SLCs, having your teachers and and your parents in the same room. But seeing it sort of like elevated at the Met was it was definitely eye-opening to me, because on top of that, not only are you sort of giving a status update, but exhibitions are also like a celebration of like, congratulations, you finished. Because I think a lot of the time, a lot of students are so invested in their work that we can't stop and look back and be like, oh yeah, like I really did do that thing. I did plan that event. I did program that thing for my robot, like stuff like that. So I also appreciate that it gives us space to sit back and be like, look at this really cool thing that I did, and I'm really proud of myself that I did this. And then to also have your mentor there who worked with you, for an entire semester, because also I think the mentor bond is also another crucial part of the Met experience that has helped me so much. Like even my current mentor, I talked to her about college admissions, about like, there's nothing I can't talk to her about, and she's been such a supportive figure. So then also to have that added support of your mentor there, to be there with your teacher, with your fellow students, with your parents, and to just like give space to look back, reflect, think like, what were my highlights? What am I proud of? What's something I can improve on for next semester? It sort of grounded me while I was there, because I think I had times where, my stress allowed me to get a little out of control, and I'm like, well, I don't know where to go from here. So then to find myself in a room surrounded by people who, cared about my education journey, who love me, who were there to, reflect with me and give me ideas on how I can come back stronger the next semester, it really, it made such a huge difference for me, because I think if I was alone at the end of every semester, sort of left to reflect on my own, once again, like I'd be a little jumbled of a word now. So it was eye-opening, it was new, but I found like immediately I was like, oh, I love this. I love that I have this time to step back and share. And also like, in a loud space where I feel safe and accommodated. I can invite whichever teachers I'd like to come to my exhibition. I get to invite my friends that I want to share my progress with. I can go see my other friends' progress and congratulate them and be like, dude, you did that, that's great. Like for example, one of the students in my advisory, came in not a very strong student, grades weren't the best, and to see him now, like, grow into a student who got his first 4.0 last semester and celebrate with him and be like, holy crap, you did that, like congratulations, that's so great. So yeah, it makes you feel, it's just such a feel-good moment, I feel like, and it makes you feel so seen.
Yeah, there's so much pride, and I look back, now you're talking about exhibitions, the fact that like, your friends would invite you to see their own exhibitions, and you're sitting there and learning with them, and you're like, wow, I didn't know you were interested in this, but the fact that you're talking about it, right, wow, look at that internship that you're at, I might want to do that, or yeah, there's just, we don't really celebrate each other in schools because it also feels super individualistic, right? But I think because of that advisory model and the fact that you just share with each other and you grow with each other and you just literally can't get away from each other, that there's that bond. I wanted to talk about, there's something, sorry, I lost it already, but
it comes and it goes.
It comes and goes because there's so much to talk about. It'll come back to me at some point. Okay, so thinking about, actually, no, I lost it. I know, right? I want to talk about the impact. So, I mean, I've graduated, but I want to know if, now that you're waiting for making your final decision to know what your plan is after this, actually, I know what it is. Okay. I think one of the coolest parts of graduating from a big picture school was the readiness for the real world. I think that in talking about, there's so many, I think, so just premise that I went into teaching. I taught at a traditional charter school in DC because I loved my education so much that I wanted to replicate that. But I didn't realize that you can't do that at schools that are already set. It takes a lot of work. But I loved the readiness for the real world in terms of, advocating for myself, writing resumes, writing cover letters, interviewing, studying what I wanted to study, which is a privilege in and of itself. How does that resonate with you? Does it resonate with you now that you're preparing for your life after high school?
Yeah, I'd say it resonates a ton, because even now, because it's such like your last semester of high school is, one, it's awful because you're like, I've already done all the hard stuff, like do I really need to come for 3 hours of the day? Like, do I really need to be here? So there's that part. But then also it allows you, all that extra time that you're not sitting in a class, like it allows you time to reflect. So a lot of thinking. I mean, like, where was I when I was starting? Where did I visualize myself being now? How do I feel going forward? And I found that I just feel like anxious, but in a good way. Like, I'm anxious to get to this next chapter of my life now. Because I think, like, I feel so prepared now where I'm like, let me go. Like, if I could graduate early, I would. Like, I want to go now. I'm ready to do this. I've been spending the past 4 years of my life getting ready for this. So yeah, I mean, like you said, having college classes that I can take, being given this huge, like 50-page catalog where it's like, these are the classes for the semester, here are the times, like tell us what you want to take and it's yours. Being able to pick internships. It's funny that you say you started the one at Pride because I'm at Pride this semester.
Are you really?
I am, yeah. I'm working with their marketing communications because I'm declaring communications as my major at my next university. So thank you. So it's just sort of having that space to grow. I mean, even right now, I'm still learning so much at my last semester internship. I'm learning, okay, well, I like this aspect of this career. I don't really like this too much, or I like the sound of this job better. Maybe this one won't suit me as much. So just having that space to grow and explore new things. Because also, like, going in my 9th grade year, I was 100% set on being a director and a filmmaker. I was like, that is what I'm doing. That's what I want to do. I'm going to go to NYU. I'm going to go to the Tisch School of Film. Like, it's going to be perfect. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the film classes. I'll intern with a filmmaker. It's going to be fine. And then I think, like, mid-pandemic, I sort of hit a brick wall, and I'm like, crap, the plan's not working. Like, I don't know what I want to do anymore. What am I going to do? And sort of, like, freaking out. But then, once again, like, bringing myself back down to earth and being like, wait, I can just go take other college classes. I can take other internships. I can explore other things that maybe might strike interest in me, make me feel even more prepared now. Whereas, I'm not a kid who's graduating from a big traditional school being like, well, I've only ever taken my A to G classes to graduate. I don't really, this sounds interesting, but I don't know. And also saving the money, not throwing away a bunch of money in classes for a major that halfway through my college career, I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound as fun anymore. So yeah, I'd say that I think as prepared as I can be. And now I'm just sort of like excited about going on to the next thing. And then on top of that, being on a college campus and having been in a college classroom with other college students before also takes away another whole like layer of anxiety. Because I know how to access my professor's office hours. I know how to set up a meeting with my professor if I have questions. I know how to professionally email a counselor. I've sat down with a college counselor before and talked about classes. So having gone through that entire experience, I think makes me feel a bit more equipped and ready, especially, having gone through it sometimes with my advisor by my side or with a parent next to me. So now going forward, I can be like, okay, I've done this before, I'm just doing it again. So yeah, I think it just makes you feel like uber equipped. And then I'm also noticing like other Met seniors are like, we're ready to go. Like, we know what we're gonna do. We know what schools we're gonna go to. We've been ready for this. We've been studying for this. So I think there's like a collective sort of like hunger to move on to the next chapter of our lives.
And I think the structure really, obviously it supports that growth and that independence. That oftentimes when I was sitting here the last 2 days, hearing teachers and educators and school leaders not stress, but their fear is like, we really have to have a tight-knit structure and agenda and schedule for students because there's this fear that we just can't let them wander, let them do what they can and should and whatever works for them. Because our structure was very like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you go to school. If you have college classes, you figure it out. You go and you leave your class. If you need to go to the library, you can go to the library. If you want to get lunch or a snack, go get lunch. There's just so much freedom that oftentimes I think as adults and as educators, we think that young learners don't have that agency to do what is best for them. And that is limiting. And so hearing folks be like, wait, no, we need to have everything set up. No, just give them a chance. Just give young people a chance to figure it out. You learn through, trial and error. Mm-hmm. So think about your schedules that we can and are capable of figuring it out.
Yeah.
I want to turn to this notion of being student-centered because I know I don't want to call it a buzzword, but everyone is, strives to be student-centered. Mm-hmm. And I want to specifically hit on the fact that we are on stage because of this notion that I feel like we often hear adults tell stories of young people's journeys through education, but rarely do we see young people on stage. And I want us to think about how moving forward, even when, if y'all are school leaders or district leaders, also think about how you're using alumni in your growth, in your development, because clearly I've graduated over 10 years ago from this high school that changed my life, but are we in that decision-making, position? Are we helping you influence your curriculum, what worked, what didn't? I don't know if you want to build on that.
Yeah, so actually recently the Met, me and a few other students, we were graciously invited by Education Reimagined to go to their student summit in DC. It's called Spark House, which that entire conference is about how do you become more student-centered, what does it mean to be student-centered, and we talked to other students who come from schools that are like the Met. We talked about our similarities, our differences, which was just really eye-opening, and then to also come back from that and grow. And honestly, I think going to that made the Met even more student-centered. So for example, now our principal, Mr. Fung, we're looking at having a possible schedule change next year and maybe switching it up. So instead of maybe just being okay, well, teachers get together, we'll talk about what we want to do, and that's going to be final, he hosted various town halls. So he was students, come on down. If you have questions about it, if you have ideas that you want to throw in, we are open ears, and it's meant to be a big brainstorming session. So, small things like that, sort of being students, I want to hear what you think, and then also seeing him take them into account, and being what were the students saying? How do we as teachers feel about that? How can we incorporate what they're saying? And even now, they're going to do one last town hall. So after the teachers come up with a new schedule, they're going to come back to the students and be how does this feel? Do we like it? Do we not like it? What should we change about it? So just offering that space to give student reflection, because I think it's a little hard, or it's easy to get lost in translation sometimes, especially when you're pushing to be okay, so we need to be student-centered, just get some students up here. And I found myself at some conferences and stuff, being asked to deliver keynotes or be in webinars, and it feels okay, good job, student. Thank you for talking. You did really good. Yeah, bye. Now it's a teacher conversation. Be look at how great that student was. We're no. That's not the point of it. That's the point is to, invite a student as a collaborator, to invite the student to hear their thoughts and then take those into account to make a better change. So that's sort of a new thing that I look at it through a different lens, because at first I was I'm so happy to be here. I feel so special. This is so nice. But just sort of looking at it from a different lens, where I'm are you here to tokenize me as a good student, or are you here to actually listen to me and hear what my feedback is? Because young people are such great, broad thinkers. We're not robots that just sit in a classroom and digest stuff and spit it out. So the way I look at it is sort of do not invite a student if you don't intend to actually take into account what they want to say. Because also, this generation is not the same as last generation. People change, social climates change, there's so many things. We could talk about social media for hours and how it's changed the way our generation looks at schooling and education. So I think it's really, really vital, but once again, it's easy to sort of get mixed up, and sort of not take into account, listen but not hear the student. So that's just something I sort of not caution, but sort of food for thought for other people, for older people, administrators, people who organize spaces like this, what are your true intentions behind inviting that younger person to speak? And then to also take them seriously, because student activists, we have a lot to think and a lot to say, and it can feel a little discouraging at times, where you walk away from a table being I feel nobody really listened to me in that room, or just sort of once again was there to tokenize me, or be you're such a great student, you're such a great kid. And even that too, you don't need to have great straight A 4.0 students in the room to have those types of conversations. Once again, bring in all types of kids, bring in kids who are struggling with their grades right now, bring in kids who it's hard for them to come to school right now, in the past have maybe had a disciplinary issue and had to work through that with the school. I think that's another thing, to sort of look at it through one lens and sort of bring me all the perfect students or all the good students, the ones who are excelling really well right now, where I think that only gives you one lens of a very broad spectrum of people and students. So yeah, it's very important.
Yes, I think we're on the question portion.
Yes, this still feels like a great
Yeah.
I could listen.
From my perspective and experience, in terms of community, when we went out and did either real world learning or internships, it's really about, I don't want to call it an exchange, but it's kind of you're supporting a young person, but that young person is also supporting your business or your organization. So you're keeping the young person within the community. You're keeping them sometimes out of the streets, right? Sometimes out of, doing bad things or whatever it is folks are doing. In terms of family engagement, it was hard because my mom wasn't really active in my education. But I can say that, actually, that's a good question. Because my mom wasn't engaged.
Yeah.
Do you want to build on that?
I mean, it's hard because my mom's like uber engaged. Like,
Yeah, your mom was the principal.
so it's like two sides of a spectrum. I mean, I think that's a trickier question to answer because I think it's like every family's so different, I think, when it comes to that, because I think, like, you have those parents who are 100% engaged. I mean, they're there at all the conferences, like, what can I do? How can I be there? Well, what can I do to help? And then you have those parents where, like, realistically, no, I'm working a shift during that time, or I need to go, look after my younger child, or I have another obligation. So I'd found that, the school being flexible in terms of that, so being like, well, can we set up a Zoom? Or, like, I've had an advisor who set up, like, an SLC at, like, 8 p.m. because that was the only time a student's parent was available. So I think sort of, like, offering that flexibility and being understanding about, different people's living conditions and sort of things that might make them unavailable has been really helpful to sort of keep the community engaged. And then also just, like, forming close relationships. Like, for example, like in our advisor has every single parent's phone number. We all have our advisor's phone number. And, it's, and it's not the type of thing where it's like, well, after 6 p.m. I'm offline, so I won't see your message until the morning. Like, I've texted my advisor at 8 p.m. and I've had an immediate response. I've texted my advisor on weekends, like, about maybe a social issue I'm having or an issue in a class. Immediate call, like, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? Like, what can we talk about? So I think sort of creating that bond or, allowing space for those relationships to be created makes it a little bit easier to be engaged. But once again, I'm not saying it's easy to even initiate those relationships, just because it can be harder for some students. Like, I remember there was a culture shock a bit in my 9th grade class when we first came in, because in first day the teachers were like, okay, well, what are you interested in? Like, tell me about yourself. What are your hobbies? Like, what's it like at home? And a lot of kids were sort of like, I've never been asked that by a teacher. Like, my middle school teachers never asked me that. I wasn't, asked all those types of, detailed questions. So I think making it feel more personal will make it easier for the community to feel sort of that drive to connect to it.
Yeah, and then obviously depending on what offerings you have, I always just think about the impact, right? Like, of the community. What is the agency that you're providing students, and what are you hoping that students take away from once they graduate, and just the growth of the community itself? I think about. Thank you. Good question. I think straight off the bat, if we make assumptions about what young people can or cannot do, I think the heart of that is that there's no relationship. You don't really understand the powers and strength of that student. I would catch a great example. My younger brother actually went to the Met and didn't succeed, didn't do well. Not that he didn't succeed, but it just wasn't for him. And then he transferred out. But I think in that case, I think for educators, if you're already like that, they can't follow this schedule, they can't follow this model, then what can they do? What can they do? Ask them, what do they want to do? Because oftentimes I feel like we limit young people before they can tell us whether or not they want to or have the desire to or the interest to. Or I wouldn't even call it scaffolding, but like, if they're not there, where can we meet them? Because oftentimes we don't meet them because we don't think they can. Yeah, I'd start by saying that.
Yeah, on top of that, I think like the teacher-student relationship is also like a mutual respect relationship too. Because, I found that I get spoken to like I'm an adult because I am an adult now, and I don't get spoken down to and stuff like that at school, which better helps me with my confidence as a student and sort of knowing that there's a mutual respect there. And, I don't respect my I respect my teachers because, once again, it's a mutual respect, not more like an authoritarian thing where like, well, you're younger than me, I know more than you, so you need to respect me. But more just having that mutual relationship that's very much give and take also makes it sort of, easier, I think, for that student to want to grow. Because I agree with you. I think if you come in making an assumption like, oh, well, that student's just going to slack off, there's no point in even trying, I think you're immediately failing that student, by not even giving them the chance to ask them. Because there's a variety of reasons why a student might not be excelling, home issue, social emotional issue, personal health issue, mental health issue, all types of things. And I think when you immediately count a student out, it further isolates them and motivates them even less to want to be there or to want to at least try. And I think another really important thing, especially at schools like the Met, is we don't push one sort of type of success, if that makes sense. So we don't say, even we tell this to our incoming ninth graders, we tell everybody, not everybody's gonna go to a 4-year. That's okay. Some kids are gonna go into military service. Some kids are gonna go into a trade, an apprenticeship, Some of you guys might stay here at the community college, transfer out in 2 years. We don't push a narrative of you all need to be getting into Ivy League schools and we need to have a 100%, we don't push that because it's simply not true.
Yeah.
So I think also, providing that security around the students, being it's okay that I'm not going this route that some other people are going, and that, that's fine, and letting them feel pride in that. For example, our graduating class, we're going so many different places. Some kids are going to 4 years, some kids are thinking about going straight into military, some kids are taking a gap year, it's all types of stuff. And not once you see somebody being shamed for that, well, you're an idiot, you're going to community college. But we're okay, good for you. That's what works for you. You seem ready. You have a good plan in place. Go do that. Good for you.
And I think that's an area that not just big picture learning schools, the Met, but I think the exposure to other opportunities that are not 4-year universities or 2-year colleges, or even just different careers, the exposure to different jobs, vocational careers, what can we continue to present to our young people that there are options that you can have pride in, right? I'm thinking about my younger brother right now, and I was if only, not just, his advisor or the teachers when he was a senior, if they knew that he really loved video games, because he loves video games, what could that have turned, how could we have pushed that passion to, maybe if you want to go into developing games, how do we get them to that path? But I also think that we have, some of our educators are pretty set in their ways. And y'all aren't thinking outside the box sometimes. And if it doesn't fit what you believe education is, then that student isn't succeeding. And that, so...
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a divide because I'm noticing that our generation, which I'm very proud of our generation for, is learning to appreciate sort of there is not one path to success. And especially also people are getting jobs now without college degrees. People are making their own careers. And you're seeing young people start their own careers at very young ages. So it's sort of a generational divide because I'll see that young students are it's okay if we all don't go the same place. And then some older teachers who are teachers who are more set in their ways and well, no, you need to be applying to these 4-year universities. You need to have highest prestige. You need to graduate with the highest 4.0 and sort of wanting to pit students against each other almost, sort of you need to be the best one. You need to be better than everybody else here. Don't help anybody else because you need to do what's best for you. Makes it toxic a bit. But, and I've been in learning spaces like that before where it feels me and other students are being pitted against each other. And I need to fight for the top spot and everybody else is working against each other. And then to have that contrasted in a space where it's let's help each other. You don't understand this, this test, that's okay. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. You're thinking about taking this college class. Cool. I took that a year ago. Here's some tips. So I think definitely that can be, it's
culture, right?
It is.
Even thinking about there's so many times where I feel we laugh, not we, but when we think about social media and the idea of influencer, it's oh, really? That's what you want to do? But then you realize, though, that there's so much power in using technology. Sorry, I'm just I wish we could really think about the impact that technology has in our... If we're on TikTok for so many hours, I don't know how many of y'all are actually on TikTok for hours, like me, but imagine young people and the way that they process information, and it's just so quick. I just feel we judge young people so much in their use of technology, but don't see the impact and the beauty that it can have in their careers, and or if that's the way that they want to go into or a direction. And sometimes we don't even allow them to know that there's a possibility to go into tech without a degree sometimes. I could say just briefly, one way that I see big picture learning doing that, we have 5 alum that work for the org now. One day an alum is going to run the organization, right? And I think that hire young people who have been in your schools, right? there's so much drive for, especially if you go through a different alternative, mode of education, and you are inspired by that, and you want to teach, and you want to go into education, hire them. Like, why are we not hiring our alums who become teachers, but they go somewhere else? I don't know. I'm really passionate about it, clearly.
Yeah, that's such a loaded question. I have to collect my thoughts around that.
Positions on boards. How
Yep.
many young people are on boards? If you think about it, if your org, your schools, there is opportunity for consultation. If you're not going to hire them full time, but you want, this is one thing that annoys me sometimes. When we as schools ask our alumni to support through surveys or, fill out this profile of where you are and what you've done with your life. And then that's it. And then you never engage them and you never come back, be a mentor. If you want to teach a class, teach a class. What have you learned? Share about your career. We're just used as, not that that's in my experience, but we need to engage young people more and not just in a way that's volunteer time or just fill this out for the need of my school. So I know the profile of my graduates, but, yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me of so at the Met we have also a buddy system, so a system that bridges older kids and younger kids together. And I found that I love it so much because then these older students can lead by example for those younger students and sort of keep it moving through. My advisor always likes to joke that I have a little entourage of ninth graders who trail behind me, watching what I'm doing, and going to see. And I love them so much because they're genuinely the sweetest little things, and I see so much of myself in them. They're the cutest little things. They're adorable. And leading by example, so also being able to show, have them see me doing talks like this, and having them sort of see that and experience that through me. I sort of see sort of a fire get lit under them, and they're like, shoot, if you're doing this, I can do this. So having that, the leading by example and bridging that relationship between upperclassmen and lowerclassmen. And then I also think the relationship that the administrator creates with their student body, I think is really, really crucial to sort of make a sort of mutual respect or a mutual agreement, sort of. I don't know how to explain it, but seeing the relationship that our principal has with our students, whereas because I think traditionally it's sort of expected principals are the big scary administrators who are don't do anything bad because then you're going to make them angry. But when you have that closer relationship with your administrator, I found that it's easier for me to feel like I can make change in my school because I know that I can walk into my principal's office and be like, hey, something's going on, or I have this idea, or something's been bugging me, something like that. And then on top of that, knowing that the administrator is there to listen as well, him being like, okay, sit down, what's going on? He has this little notebook that he keeps, and he flips it open to a new page and gets out a pen and he's like, what's on your mind? What's going on? So seeing that, and then also having other students feel secure to be like, oh, I've been thinking about this, or maybe a change to this could be beneficial. Let me go sit down with our principal and talk about that. I think that's also another really crucial thing to sort of make those students feel empowered to be student leaders and to make a space more student-centered.
It's interesting because I feel I think back on my advisor, and similar to Soph, I had her number. She would have, funny enough, she'd have the students over to her house for barbecues, her advisory. But I feel and I wonder, right, did Ms. Baker ever switch off? Was she ever don't hit me up, leave me alone? Yeah. But she never was that way, and I think it's the culture. I think about when I was a teacher at a traditional high school, I wanted to be that person, but there were hours where you were no students are allowed up in the classrooms. And I think you have that expectation of you're on and you're off, I kind of lived it. I was like, all right, well, at this point, I'm not going to take calls from my students or text messages, because I gave them my number, though everyone was like, don't give your students your number, and I'm like, why? This is the community I'm trying to build. But I didn't have that relationship with my own admin, where they were like, I don't want to say you're a human, but I was a young teacher, and they were like, what are the numbers? What are the test scores? Why are the grades this way? And I was like, this isn't human. This isn't about the young person in my classroom. It's about you meeting a quota, and this felt foreign to me. Mm-hmm. And I think because I didn't have that as an adult, I burned out because I didn't have that, I don't want to call it love, but the love that I felt as a student. And I sometimes wonder too, I think my work in the org, I want to know what those relationships are like for staff, because I had such a great time as a young person, and I think I would too if I was an advisor. I think it's culture. It's school culture. I don't know, Melissa, while you're here. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to touch on to your point about like, that love, like that, like close sort of like relationship that you create with the teachers. Like, for example, my advisor, like there have been times where he's needed to lean on us more than we've needed to lean on him. Like, for example, I think it was about a year ago, unfortunately, his mother had passed away. So he had to be out of school for a little bit. And, we had all came together. We created, a huge text string like, hey, we are so sorry. We just heard about we heard the news. Is there anything we can do for you? Is there anything we can bring to school? Is there anything, we can set up so you feel more accommodated, so you feel more present? And then to hear him be like, I really did need that, you guys. Like, I appreciate that. So sort of like having that mutual, like, give and take relationship. Times where, it really has been hard on our advisor and he's not having the best day. And then, like, us allowing that space to be like, oh, like, tell us about it. How can we help you? We start every single advisory with a circle, and we do a circle question. Sometimes they're silly, sometimes they're a bit more serious. So, like, allowing that space for every student to share their feeling, and then on top of that, including the advisor and having the students be like, you tell us. So giving that, like, mutual relationship. And, like, we purely do it out of love because we all have so much love for each other. My advisor, who's done so much for me, over these past 4 years, if something's ever up, I'm like, how can I help you? What's going on? What's up?
Yeah.
So I think that's another huge part of it, too, to help those teachers feel like they have a space where they can decompress a little bit and, where they feel like they're being accommodated as well. Because I think at times it's sort of forgotten that, like, students can be a big support for teachers in those settings as well.
This actually reminds me of some of the work that I do at BPL. I support our fellowships. So we have 2 fellowships, Equity Fellows and Ashe Fellows. And a lot of the work, so, we have teachers, we have principals, we have superintendents. A lot of the work that I do is in planning convenings and what are the experiences that these adults in this leadership development fellowship, what do they need, right? Because oftentimes they're like, I'm constantly on, I am burning out, I am tired, I'm stressed, my district, isn't supporting me. What's interesting is that I think about the mental health of our educators, of our leaders, right? And rarely do we have time where we tell our adults in our organizations or our schools, let's chill, right? Like, let's bring in someone to help you breathe. So I intentionally set aside time, right, for, should we bring in people to, like, meditate with us? Like, we talk about rest is radical, but we don't give our teachers time to rest or time to, like, freaking breathe and reflect on who they are as humans, as as professionals, not even young, as professionals. And I think that contributes obviously to the burnout, but how do we take care of our educators' souls? Because if there is no soul in the work that we're doing, there is no change in the impact that we have on young people. And I think it's activists and activism to find what it is, like, just to have people rest. And if we're not, oftentimes we do, like, let's go to happy hour. That's not enough. Like, great, we're gonna numb ourselves a little bit. Alcohol is great. Let's be happy. But I'm gonna go home, feel hungover, and then I'm gonna go back to work, right? But, like, let's bring in a speaker. Let's talk about, what did we do? We planned a picnic. We had a picnic. Abby, were you there for the picnic? No. We had a picnic in San Diego. We brought some of our fellows, hired a picnic company. We had drinks and food, but it was like, just chill with get to know your coworkers. Get to know them as you bring your family to this picnic. Sorry, that was just some examples.
Yeah.
I care about our leaders a lot.
Yeah, of course.